The Obama White House flooding the zone with favorable pictures of the first family on their trip to South Africa. With the former first family, a clear attempt to move past the embarrassing and some say disrespectful selfie that Mr. Obama participated in during Nelson Mandela's memorial service yesterday. I'm Lou Dobbs. Good evening, everybody. The White House today flooding news outlets with a series of behind-the-scenes photos showing the Obamas, the Bushes, former Secretary of State Clinton aboard Air Force One on their way to South Africa. Among the images that the White House photographer shared, the current and former first families leaving Air Force One, and President Bush showing his artwork and sharing a joke with President Obama. The administration using the official background photos to try to crowd out the images of the president's somewhat embarrassing selfie with the British and Danish prime ministers during yesterday's memorial service for Nelson Mandela. The president under considerable criticism today for his failure to conduct himself in what some would say would be a dignified manner, just moments after the president had lauded Mandela for making him the man he is.
I learned of Nelson Mandela and the struggles taking place in this beautiful land, and it stirred something in me. It woke me up to my responsibilities, to others and to myself, and it set me on an improbable journey that finds me here today. And while I will always fall short of Madiba's example, he makes me want to be a better man.
And we're learning more about that controversial handshake between the president and Cuban leader Raul Castro at Mandela's memorial. The Daily Beast's Eli Lake reporting the administration has been engaged in 6 months of quiet talks with Cuba on a number of issues, including immigration, direct postal service, and disaster response. Republican Senator Ted Cruz's office also confirmed today he walked out of Mandela's memorial service while Castro delivered his speech. The senator protesting Cuba's treatment of political prisoners and failure to hold free elections. The president remained in his seat. And another bizarre incident raising some questions about security at the event. It turns out this man, who stood within feet of President Obama and the various other heads of state, is a complete fraud and imposter. The man ostensibly interpreting for the deaf. He was posing as a translator, signing, but instead of signing, he was making up his own gestures as he went along. White House Deputy Press Secretary Josh Earnest didn't respond to questions about him, instead telling the White House press corps to talk with the Secret Service. The man still has not been identified by either U.S. or South African authorities. The president's foreign policy and domestic failures clearly having an effect on his approval rating. A new NBC Wall Street Journal poll shows his approval rating at 43%. That's 1 point above his record low set back in October. 54% say they disapprove of the job President Obama is doing. That's an all-time high. And for the first time, half of those surveyed view Obamacare as a bad idea. When asked what shaped their view of the president this year, almost 60% cited the health care law as the main factor. And new numbers out this morning show the Obama administration is nowhere near hitting their ambitious target of enrolling 7 million Americans through the Obamacare website. Just under 365,000 people have signed up for Obamacare in the first 2 months, fewer than a third of the 1.2 million people officials had originally projected to enroll nationwide by the end of last month. And while 365,000 have purchased private insurance, more than double that, 803,000, have been determined eligible to join Medicaid. The numbers in the state marketplaces have also grown, but not as quickly. Oregon, for example, has enrolled only 44 applicants through last month. Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius appeared before Congress for only the second time since the Obamacare website went live in October. She testified before the Energy and Commerce Committee, and she came prepared. She called for an investigation of her own website, her own department, and herself.
I've asked our Inspector General, Dan Levinson, to investigate the development of healthcare.gov, including contractor acquisition, the overall management of the project, and performance and payment of our contractors.
And she had this to say when asked about the 5.6 million Americans whose insurance has been canceled over the past few months.
I don't know where the 5 million number comes from. I know people have been told that their health plan doesn't necessarily match the ACA compliant plans. They are not in a grandfathered plan, and a number of those individuals have already re-enlisted and enrolled in plans. So losing coverage and being notified that the plan that they had doesn't exist anymore are two very different things.
Well, those 5.6 million Americans whose plans were canceled may feel entirely different. We are still trying to sort out exactly what the Secretary meant with her comments. Well, conservative activist James O'Keefe and his group, Project Veritas, today released a fourth video showing Obamacare navigators in Texas advising applicants to commit fraud. This newest video shows O'Keefe following up with a number of nonprofit organizations, and he learns that 5 negotiators have now been fired as a result of his investigations. More than 100 organizations benefited from $67 million to bring on the so-called navigators. So O'Keefe has his work cut out for him if he is to do a, as it were, full sweep. On Capitol Hill, House Speaker John Boehner lashed out at conservative advocacy groups for encouraging Republicans to oppose the budget deal unveiled last night by Senator Patty Murray and Congressman Paul Ryan.
They're using our members and they're using the American people for their own goals. This is ridiculous. Listen, if you're for more deficit reduction, you're for this agreement.
The Club for Growth, Americans for Prosperity, and Heritage Action all lobbying against the deal that would only reduce the deficit by a little over $2 billion a year for the next decade, but it is a reduction. And this just in, House Republicans have announced they will bring the deal to the floor for a vote tomorrow, one of their last legislative acts before they leave for Washington for the remainder of the year. It'll be interesting to see who votes no after Speaker Boehner's comments. House Democrats reportedly skeptical about the agreement, partly because it does not include unemployment benefits for some 1.3 million people. Among the Democrats with reservations, House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer, who isn't whipping up any votes, we're told, at least as of this hour. And the Senate will vote next week on the proposal, and it's expected to pass, although a growing list of Republican senators now say they are opposing it, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senators Marco Rubio, Tom Coburn, and Rand Paul. On Wall Street today, stocks finished lower for a second straight session. The Dow down 130 points, the S&P lost 20, the Nasdaq down 57 points. Hilton set to return to the New York Stock Exchange tomorrow at $20 a share under the symbol HLT. The IPO, the biggest ever for a hotel, raising more than $2.3 billion. Much more ahead here tonight. Iranian hardliners upset with President Rouhani's dealings with the West. Waleed Faris and Colonel Michael Kay on what it means to the success of the Iranian nuclear talks. Also, systemic risks too big to fail, the Great Recession. Commodities and Future Trading Commissioner Bart Chilton on why the economy is now safer thanks to the new Volcker rule. And President Obama is having some difficulty and has created some controversy over the selfie he took at the Mandela Memorial. We take it up in the Dobbs Forum with some of our favorite radio talk show hosts. Stay with us. We're coming right back. House Speaker John Boehner blasting conservative groups that oppose the Ryan Murray budget deal. We talk next with the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Bob Goodlatte.